Mr. Arthur Sterling was not asleep. His eyes were closed, his breathing was heavy and rhythmic, and his frail body was slumped deep into the burgundy velvet of his favorite armchair. To anyone watching, he looked like a tired, harmless old man drifting into an afternoon nap. But under his eyelids, Arthur was awake. His mind was sharp, calculating and waiting. This was a game Arthur played often. He was 75 years old, and he was one of the wealthiest men in the city. He owned hotels, shipping lines, and technology firms. He had everything a man could dream of except for one thing: trust. Over the years, Arthur had become bitter. His children rarely visited him, and when they did, they only talked about his will. His business partners smiled at him but sharpened their knives when his back was turned. Even his previous staff members had stolen from him. Silver spoons, cash from his wallet, rare wines. Arthur had grown to believe that every human being on earth was greedy. He believed that if you gave a person a chance to take something without getting caught, they would take it. Today, he was going to test that theory again. Outside the heavy oak doors of his library, the rain was pouring down, hitting the glass windows like bullets. Inside, the fire crackled warmly. Arthur had set the stage perfectly. On the small mahogany table right next to his hand, he had placed a thick envelope. It was open. Inside the envelope was a stack of $100 bills, totaling $5,000. It was enough money to change a poor person's life for a month. It was visibly spilling out, looking like it had been carelessly forgotten by a senile old man. Arthur waited. He heard the door handle turn. A young woman named Sarah walked in. Sarah was his newest maid. She had only been working at the Sterling mansion for 3 weeks. She was young, perhaps in her late 20s, but her face looked tired. She had dark circles under her eyes that told a story of sleepless nights and constant worry. Sarah was a widow. Arthur knew this from her background check. Her husband had died in a factory accident 2 years ago, leaving her with nothing but debts and a 7-year-old son named Leo. Today was a Saturday, and usually Sarah worked alone. But today, the schools were closed for emergency repairs due to the storm. Sarah had no money for a babysitter. She had begged the housekeeper, Mrs. Higgins, to let her bring her son to work, promising he would be silent as a mouse. Mrs. Higgins had reluctantly agreed, warning Sarah that if Mr. Sterling saw the child, they would both be thrown out on the street. Arthur heard the soft footsteps of the maid, followed by the even softer, lighter footsteps of a child. "Stay here, Leo," Sarah whispered. Her voice was trembling with anxiety. "Sit in that corner on the rug. Do not move. Do not touch anything. Do not make a sound. Mr. Sterling is sleeping in the chair. If you wake him up, Mommy will lose her job, and we won't have anywhere to sleep tonight. Do you understand?" "Yes, Mommy," a small, gentle voice replied. Arthur, feigning sleep, felt a pang of curiosity. The boy's voice didn't sound mischievous. It sounded scared. "I have to go polish the silver in the dining room," Sarah whispered hurriedly. "I will be back in 10 minutes. Please, Leo, be good." "I promise," the boy said. Arthur heard the door click shut. Sarah was gone. Now it was just the billionaire and the boy. For a long time, there was silence. The only sounds were the crackling fire and the grandfather clock ticking in the corner. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Arthur kept his breathing steady, but he was listening intensely. He expected the boy to start playing. He expected to hear the sound of a vase breaking or the shuffling of feet as the boy explored the room. Kids were naturally curious, and poor kids, Arthur assumed, were naturally hungry for things they didn't have. But Leo didn't move. 5 minutes passed. Arthur's neck was starting to cramp from holding his head in the same position, but he didn't break character. He waited. Then he heard it, the soft rustle of fabric. The boy was standing up. Arthur tensed his muscles. "Here we go," he thought. "The little thief is making his move." He heard the small footsteps approaching his chair. They were slow and hesitant. The boy was coming closer. Arthur knew exactly what the boy was looking at. The envelope. The $5,000 was sitting right there, inches from Arthur's relaxed hand. A 7-year-old boy would know what money was. He would know that this money could buy toys, candy, or food. Arthur visualized the scene. The boy would reach out, grab the cash, and shove it into his pocket. Then, Arthur would open his eyes, catch him in the act, and fire the mother immediately. It would be another lesson learned. Never trust anyone. The footsteps stopped. The boy was standing right beside him. Arthur could almost feel the child's breath. He waited for the rustle of paper. He waited for the grab. But the grab never came. Instead, Arthur felt a strange sensation. He felt a small, cold hand gently touch his arm. The touch was light, barely a feather's weight. Arthur fought the urge to flinch. What is he doing? He wondered. Checking if I'm dead? The boy withdrew his hand. Then, Arthur heard a heavy sigh from the child. Mr. Arthur? The boy whispered. It was so quiet, barely audible over the rain. Arthur didn't respond. He snored softly, a fake, rumbling snore. The boy shifted. Then Arthur heard a sound that confused him. It wasn't the sound of money being taken. It was the sound of a zipper. The boy was taking off his jacket. What is this kid doing? Arthur thought, his mind racing. Is he getting comfortable? Is he going to take a nap too? Then Arthur felt something warm settle over his legs. It was the boy's jacket. It was a cheap, thin windbreaker, damp from the rain outside, but it was being placed over Arthur's knees like a blanket. The room was drafty. The large windows let in a chill despite the fire. Arthur hadn't realized it, but his hands were actually cold. Leo smoothed the small jacket over the old man's legs. Then Arthur heard the boy whisper again. You're cold, Leo murmured to the sleeping man. Mommy says sick people shouldn't get cold. Arthur's heart skipped a beat. This was not part of the script. The boy wasn't looking at the money. He was looking at him. Then Arthur heard a rustle on the table. Ah, he thought. Here it is. Now that he's lulled me into a false sense of security, he takes the cash. But the money didn't move. Instead, Arthur heard the sound of paper sliding across wood. The envelope was being moved, but not taken. Arthur risked opening his left eye just a tiny crack, a millimeter slit that was hidden by his eyelashes. What he saw shocked him to his core. The boy, Leo, was standing by the table. He was a small, scrawny kid with messy hair and clothes that were clearly second-hand. His shoes were worn out at the toes, but his face was filled with a serious, intense focus. Leo had noticed the envelope was hanging dangerously off the edge of the table, looking like it might fall onto the floor. Leo had simply pushed it back toward the center of the table, near the lamp, so it wouldn't fall. Then Leo saw something else. On the floor near Arthur's foot was a small, leather-bound notebook. It had fallen from Arthur's lap earlier when he sat down. Leo bent down and picked it up. He dusted off the cover with his sleeve. He placed the notebook gently on the table next to the money. Safe now, Leo whispered. The boy then turned around and walked back to his corner of the rug. He sat down, pulled his knees to his chest, and wrapped his arms around himself. He was shivering slightly. He had given his only jacket to the billionaire, and now he was cold. Arthur lay there, his mind completely blank. For the first time in 20 years, Arthur Sterling didn't know what to think. He had set a trap for a rat, but he had caught a dove. The cynicism that had built up in his heart like a stone wall developed a small crack. Why didn't he take it? Arthur screamed internally. They are poor. I know they are poor. His mother wears shoes with holes in the soles. Why didn't he take the money? Before Arthur could process this, the heavy library door creaked open again. Sarah rushed in. She was breathless, her face pale with terror. She had clearly run all the way from the dining room. She looked at the corner and saw Leo sitting there, shivering without his jacket. Then she looked at the armchair. She saw her son's dirty, cheap jacket draped over the billionaire's expensive suit pants. She saw the money on the table. Her hands flew to her mouth. She thought the worst. She thought Leo had been bothering the master. She thought Leo had tried to steal and then tried to cover it up. "Leo!" she hissed, her voice sharp with panic. She ran to the boy and grabbed him by the arm, pulling him up. "What did you do? Why is your coat on him? Did you touch him? Did you touch that money?" Leo looked up at his mother, his eyes wide. "No, Mommy. He was shivering. I just wanted to keep him warm, and the paper was falling, so I fixed it." "Oh, God!" Sarah cried, tears welling up in her eyes. "He's going to wake up. He's going to fire us. We're ruined, Leo. I told you not to move." Sarah began to frantically pull the jacket off Arthur's legs, her hands shaking so hard she almost knocked over the lamp. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," she was whispering to the sleeping man, even though she thought he couldn't hear her. "Please don't wake up. Please." Arthur felt the jacket being ripped away. He felt the mother's terror. It radiated off her like heat. She wasn't scared of a monster, she was scared of him. She was scared of the man who had more money than, but terrified his staff so much that a simple act of kindness from a child was seen as a crime. Arthur realized in that moment that he had become a monster. He decided it was time to wake up. Arthur let out a groan, a loud theatrical groan, and shifted in his chair. Sarah froze. She clutched Leo to her chest, backing away toward the door. She looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. Arthur opened his eyes. He blinked a few times, adjusting to the light. He looked at the ceiling, then slowly lowered his gaze to the terrified woman and the small boy standing by the door. He put on his best grumpy face. He scowled, his bushy gray eyebrows coming together. "What?" Arthur grumbled, his voice gravelly and harsh. "What is all this noise? Can a man not get some rest in his own house?" I am so sorry, Mr. Sterling," Sarah stammered, bowing her head. I was cleaning. This is my son. I had no choice. The schools were closed. We are leaving right now. Please, sir, don't fire me. I'll take him outside. He won't bother you again. Please, sir, I need this job." Arthur stared at them. He looked at the envelope of money on the table. It was exactly where Leo had pushed it. He looked at the boy, who was trembling, not from cold anymore, but from fear of the angry old man. Arthur sat up straighter. He reached out and picked up the envelope of money. He tapped it against his palm. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut, expecting him to accuse them of trying to steal it. "Boy!" Arthur boomed. Leo peeked out from behind his mother's leg. "Yes, sir?" "Come here," Arthur commanded. Sarah gripped Leo's shoulder tighter. "Sir, he didn't mean to—" "I said," Arthur raised his voice, "come here." Leo stepped away from his mother. He walked slowly toward the armchair, his small hands shaking. He stopped right in front of Arthur's knees. Arthur leaned forward, his face inches from the boy's. He looked deep into Leo's eyes, searching for a lie, searching for the greed he was so sure existed in everyone. "Did you put your jacket on me?" Arthur asked. Leo swallowed hard. "Yes, sir." "Why?" Arthur asked. "I'm a stranger, and I'm rich. I have a closet full of fur coats upstairs. Why would you give me your jacket?" Leo looked down at his shoes, then back up at Arthur. "Because you looked cold, sir, and Mommy says that when someone is cold, you give them a blanket, even if they are rich. Cold is cold." Arthur stared at the boy. Cold is cold. It was such a simple truth. Arthur looked at Sarah. She was holding her breath. "What is your name, son?" Arthur asked, his voice softening just a fraction. "Leo, sir." Arthur nodded slowly. He looked at the money in his hand, then he looked at the open door of the library. A plan began to form in his mind. The test wasn't over. In fact, it had just begun. This boy had passed the first level, the level of honesty. But Arthur wanted to know more. He wanted to know if this was just a fluke, or if this boy truly possessed a heart of gold. Arthur shoved the money into his inside pocket. "You woke me up," Arthur grunted, returning to his grumpy persona. "I hate being woken up." Sarah let out a small sob. "We are leaving, sir." "No," Arthur said sharply. "You're not leaving." "We are leaving, sir," Sarah repeated, grabbing Leo's hand and turning toward the door. "Stop!" Arthur's voice cracked like a whip across the silent room. Sarah froze. She didn't dare to take another step. She turned around slowly, her face drained of all color. "I didn't say you could leave," Arthur growled. He pointed a shaking finger at the velvet armchair where he had been sitting. "Look at this." Sarah looked. There was a small, dark, damp spot on the burgundy fabric where Leo's wet jacket had rested. "My chair," Arthur said, his voice dripping with fake anger. "This is imported Italian velvet. It costs $200 a yard, and now it is wet. It is ruined." I will dry it, sir," Sarah stammered. "I will get a towel right now." Water stains velvet, Arthur lied. He stood up, leaning heavily on his cane, looming over the terrified mother. You can't just dry it. It needs to be professionally restored. That will cost $500. Arthur watched them closely. This was the second part of the test. He wanted to see if the mother would get angry at the boy. He wanted to see if she would scream at Leo for costing her money she didn't have. He wanted to see if the pressure would break their bond. Sarah looked at the spot, then she looked at Arthur. Tears streamed down her face. "Mr. Sterling, please," she begged. "I don't have $500. I haven't even been paid for this month yet. Please, take it out of my wages. I will work for free. Just don't hurt my boy." Arthur's eyes narrowed. She was offering to work for free. That was rare. But he wasn't satisfied yet. He looked down at Leo. "And you," Arthur said to the boy, "you caused this damage. What do you have to say for yourself?" Leo stepped forward. He wasn't crying. His small face was very serious. He reached into his pocket. "I don't have $500, Leo said softly, "but I have this." Leo pulled his hand out of his pocket. He opened his small fingers. In the center of his palm sat a small, battered toy car. It was missing one wheel. The paint was chipped. It was clearly old and worthless to anyone else. But the way Leo held it, it looked like he was holding a diamond. "This is Fast Eddie," Leo explained. "He is the fastest car in the world. He was my daddy's before he went to heaven. Mommy gave it to me." Sarah gasped. "Leo, no, you don't have to." "It's okay, Mommy," Leo said bravely. He looked up at the billionaire. "You can have Fast Eddie to pay for the chair. He is my best friend. But you are mad, and I don't want you to be mad at Mommy." Leo reached out and placed the broken toy car on the expensive mahogany table, right next to the leather notebook. Arthur stared at the toy. He felt like he couldn't breathe. The room suddenly felt very small. Arthur looked at the stack of cash in his pocket, thousands of dollars. Then he looked at the three-wheeled toy car on the table. This boy was offering his most precious possession to fix a mistake he made out of kindness. He was giving up the only thing he had left of his father to save his mother's job. Arthur's heart, which had been frozen for so many years, suddenly cracked wide open. The pain was sharp and immediate. He realized that this boy, who had nothing, was richer than Arthur would ever be. Arthur had millions, but he would never sacrifice his favorite possession for anyone. The silence stretched out. The rain continued to hammer against the window. Arthur picked up the toy car. His hand was trembling. "You—" Arthur's voice was no longer a growl. It was a whisper. "You would give me this for a wet chair?" "Yes, sir," Leo said. "Is it enough?" Arthur closed his eyes. He thought about his own sons. They only called him when they wanted a new sports car or a vacation house. They never gave him anything. They only took. "Yes," Arthur whispered, opening his eyes. They were wet. "Yes, Leo, it is enough. It is more than enough." Arthur slumped back into his chair. The act was over. He couldn't play the villain anymore. He felt tired, not from age, but from the weight of his own guilt. "Sarah," Arthur said, his voice changing completely. It became the voice of a tired, lonely old man. "Sit down." "Sir?" Sarah looked confused by the change in his tone. "I said sit down!" Arthur barked, then softened. "Please, just sit. Stop looking at me like I'm going to eat you." Sarah hesitantly sat on the edge of the sofa, pulling Leo onto her lap. Arthur looked at the toy car in his hand. He spun the remaining wheels with his thumb. "I have a confession to make," Arthur said, looking at the floor. "The chair isn't ruined, it's just water. It will dry in an hour." Sarah let out a breath she had been holding. "Oh, thank God!" "And," Arthur continued, looking up at them with intense eyes, "I wasn't asleep." Sarah's eyes went wide. You weren't?" "No," Arthur shook his head. "I was pretending. I left that money on the table on purpose. I wanted to see if you would steal it. I wanted to catch you." Sarah pulled Leo tighter against her chest. She looked hurt. "You were testing us? Like we are rats in a maze?" "Yes," Arthur admitted. "I am a bitter old man, Sarah. I thought everyone was a thief. I thought everyone had a price." He pointed a shaking finger at Leo. "But him," Arthur's voice broke. "He didn't take the money. He covered me. He covered me because he thought I was cold. And then he offered me his father's car." Arthur wiped a tear from his cheek. He didn't care that his maid was watching. "I have lost my way," Arthur whispered. "I have all this money, but I am poor. You have nothing, yet you raised a king." Arthur stood up. He walked over to the fireplace and took a deep breath. He turned back to them. "The test is over," Arthur announced, "and you passed, both of you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the thick envelope of money. He walked over to Sarah and held it out. "Take this," Arthur said. Sarah shook her head vigorously. "No, sir, I don't want your money. I just want to work. I want to earn my keep." "Take it," Arthur insisted. "It is not charity. It is a bonus. It is payment for the lesson your son just taught me." Sarah hesitated. She looked at the money, then at Leo's worn-out shoes. "Please," Arthur said softly, "buy the boy a warm coat. Buy him new shoes. Buy yourself a bed that doesn't hurt your back. Take it." Sarah reached out with a trembling hand and took the envelope. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling. Thank you." "Don't thank me yet," Arthur said. A small, genuine smile touched his lips for the first time in years. "I have a business proposition for you, Leo." Leo looked up, his eyes bright. "For me?" "Yes," Arthur said. He held up the little toy car. "I am going to keep Fast Eddie. He is mine now. You gave him to me as payment." Leo's face fell slightly, but he nodded. "Okay, a deal is a deal. But," Arthur continued, "I can't drive a car with 3 wheels. I need a mechanic. Someone to help me fix things around here. Someone to help me fix myself." Arthur knelt down, a painful movement for his old knees, so he was eye level with the 7-year-old. "Leo, how would you like to come here every day after school? You can sit in the library, you can do your homework, and you can teach this grumpy old man how to be kind again. In exchange, I will pay for your school. All the way through college. Deal?" Leo looked at his mother. Sarah was crying openly now, covering her mouth with her hands. She nodded. Leo looked back at Arthur. He smiled, a gap-toothed, beautiful smile. "Deal," Leo said. He held out his small hand. Arthur Sterling, the billionaire who trusted no one, took the small hand in his and shook it. 10 years passed. The Sterling mansion was no longer a dark, silent place. The heavy curtains were always open, letting the sunlight pour in. The garden, once overgrown and thorny, was full of bright flowers. On a warm Sunday afternoon, the library was full of people. But it wasn't a party. It was a gathering of lawyers, businessmen, and a young man named Leo. Leo was 17 now. He was tall, handsome, and wearing a crisp suit. He stood by the window, looking out at the garden where his mother, Sarah, was arranging flowers. Sarah didn't look tired anymore. She looked happy. She was now the head of the Sterling Foundation, managing millions of dollars given to charity every year. The room was quiet because the lawyer was reading the last will and testament of Mr. Arthur Sterling. Arthur had passed away peacefully in his sleep 3 days ago. He had died in the burgundy armchair, the same one where the test had happened 10 years prior. Arthur's biological children were there, 2 sons and a daughter. They sat on the other side of the room looking impatient. They checked their watches. They whispered to each other about selling the house and splitting the fortune. They didn't look sad. They looked greedy. The lawyer, Mr. Henderson, cleared his throat. "To my children," Mr. Henderson read from the document, "I leave the trust funds that were established for you at birth. You have never visited me without asking for money, so I assume the money is all you desire. You have your millions. Enjoy them." The children grumbled, but they seemed satisfied. They stood up to leave, not caring to hear the rest. "Wait," Mr. Henderson said. "There is more. To the rest of my estate, my companies, this mansion, my investments, and my personal savings, I leave everything to the one person who gave me something when I had nothing." The children stopped. They turned around, confused. "Who?" one son demanded. "We are his family." "I leave it all," the lawyer read, "to Leo." The room erupted in shouting. The sons were furious. They pointed at Leo. "Him?" they yelled. "The Maid Son? This is a joke! He tricked our father!" Leo didn't move. He didn't say a word. He just held something in his hand, rubbing it with his thumb. The lawyer raised his hand for silence. Mr. Sterling left a letter explaining his decision. He wanted me to read it to you. The lawyer unfolded a handwritten note. To my children and the world, you measure wealth in gold and property. You think I am giving Leo my fortune because I have gone mad. But you are wrong. I am paying a debt. 10 years ago, on a rainy Saturday, I was a spiritual beggar. I was cold, lonely, and empty. A 7-year-old boy saw me shivering. He didn't see a billionaire. He saw a human being. He covered me with his own jacket. He protected my money when he could have stolen it. But the true debt was paid when he gave me his most prized possession, a broken toy car, to save his mother from my anger. He gave me everything he had, expecting nothing in return. That day, he taught me that the poorest pocket can hold the richest heart. He saved me from dying as a bitter, hateful man. He gave me a family. He gave me 10 years of laughter, noise, and love. So I leave him my money. It is a small trade, because he gave me back my soul. The lawyer finished reading. He looked at Leo. Leo, the lawyer said, Mr. Sterling wanted you to have this. The lawyer handed Leo a small velvet box. Leo opened it. Inside, sitting on a cushion of white silk, was the old toy car. Fast Eddie. Arthur had kept it for 10 years. He had polished it. He had even had a jeweler fix the missing wheel with a tiny piece of solid gold. Leo picked up the toy. Tears ran down his face. He didn't care about the mansion. He didn't care about the billions of dollars or the angry people shouting in the room. He missed his friend. He missed the grumpy old man who used to help him with his math homework. Leo walked over to his mother, Sarah, who had come in from the garden. She hugged him tight. He was a good man, Leo, she whispered. He was, Leo replied. He just needed a jacket. The angry children stormed out of the house, vowing to sue, but they knew they would lose. The will was ironclad. Leo looked around the massive library. He looked at the empty armchair. He walked over to it and placed the toy car with the gold wheel on the side table, right next to the lamp. Safe now, Leo whispered, repeating the words he had said 10 years ago. Leo grew up to be a different kind of billionaire. He didn't build walls. He built schools. He didn't hoard money. He used it to fix things that were broken, just like he had tried to fix the ruined chair. And every time someone asked him how he became so successful, Leo would smile, pull a battered toy car from his pocket and say, I didn't buy my success, I bought it with kindness. Now the moral of this story. Kindness is an investment that never fails. In a world where everyone is trying to take something, those who give are the ones who truly change the world. Arthur Sterling had all the money in the world, but he was poor until a child taught him how to love. Never underestimate the power of a small act of goodness. A jacket, a kind word, or a simple sacrifice can melt the coldest heart. When you give, do it without expecting anything in return, and life will reward you in ways money never can. If you enjoy this story, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching.